Personally, there's something about holding this in my hand that I don't get when I use my phone. Now, I'm not being critical. If you're using your phone, that's fine. I'm just saying for me, I got to touch a paper. I want to see my highlights. I want to see my notes that I've written because when I study, as I've said many times, I carry on a conversation with my Bible, and I'll write questions in the column or I'll make comments. And I know you can do that on your app as well, but for me, I'm a visual person, and when I try to use an app, it just doesn't work with me. Okay, so those of you who do, fine, use the apps. Those of you who don't, stick with the Bible like this. And I think it's important when we're studying with someone, or someone asks you a question, you're telling them what the Lord has done for you. I think it's important that they see that we have a Bible. Because if I never reference the Bible or have a Bible where I can show them, this is the verse I'm talking about, then you're more likely to hear people say, well, Joe's opinion was, or what Joe said, and that's not what we want. Okay, we want people saying the Bible says this. Jesus in the Gospel of Mark said this. So it's important that we, I think, are honest with people when we don't know the answer. But this man, he wants to go with Jesus. Jesus says, no, I want you to go home. And I want you to tell people what I've done for you. That's the definition of evangelism. So what does Jesus do after he sends this man off? He's a Gentile, okay? And he's the first person Jesus has said, go and tell people what I've done for you, a Gentile. Okay? So what does Jesus do? He gets back in the boat. He says, let's go back across the other side. So now we're going back up toward the area of Capernaum. Capernaum is where Jesus, that's his home base. And so they get in the boat, they go to the other side, and notice in verse 21, it says, a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. So he's back in Jewish territory, all right? Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. Now, there's a lot of similarities between our worship and the synagogue. What I mean by that is the synagogue had synagogue rulers. And typically these rulers, they were not priests, they were just common men in the congregation who was chosen to be their leaders. And every Sabbath, one of them would serve as the president of the synagogue. If you read commentaries and stuff like that, you'll come across that word president of the synagogue. That is simply the one who's in charge for the day. Sometimes congregations will have an elder for the month. And that's the person that if you got any questions toward the elders or whatever, that's the elder of the month. And this individual would then kind of oversee all the worship service. That's what this Jewish ruler was. He was one of those individuals, and he would often lead the worship in the synagogue. Sometimes he would bring the message. Sometimes he would ask a visiting man if he had something he wanted to share. And we see that happening as Jesus is traveling around. When he goes into a synagogue, a lot of times they'll ask Jesus, to speak. Or Paul, to speak. And that's why they're doing that. All right. So his name is Jairus. And he is an individual, since he is a synagogue leader, he's probably been out there a lot. Whenever Jesus was traveling through and all the crowds are coming around, I'm sure Jairus was probably among the crowds because he wants to watch over the flock. I mean, if his flock is going out and following this man Jesus, he wants to know what Jesus is teaching them. And so that's probably why he is familiar with Jesus and what Jesus has the ability to do. So why is he out there? Yeah, his daughter is sick, very, very sick. Uh, and at some point, Jairus realized she's not going to make it. And so, like any parent, it's a parent's worst nightmare for something like this to happen. And so you can imagine Jairus is thinking, what can I do? Physically, there's nothing he can do for his daughter. But then he thinks about Jesus. That's why he's there. He has come out to ask Jesus to help his daughter who's dying. And so he comes up to Jesus. Notice when he sees Jesus, he falls at his feet. He pleads fervently with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and lay your hands on her. Heal her so she can live." What is this father going through? Emotional turmoil. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than this, does it? As I said, it's a parent's worst nightmare. And so he is very distraught, but he knows something about Jesus. He has seen something Jesus do or something that Jesus said, but it has driven him to come to Jesus and to ask him to heal his daughter. What does Jesus do? Now, Mark says Jesus went with him. Now, Mark's gospel is fast-paced, and as I've said before, Mark doesn't always give us all the details. I'm sure that there was some conversation between Jesus and Jairus, but Mark doesn't record it. There's no need to record it because that's not his purpose, okay? He's giving us the details. That's important for what he's wanting to reveal about who Jesus is. And so he says in verse 24, Jesus went with him as if, he comes up, "Jesus, please help my daughter live," and then Jesus just immediately takes off. So there may have been some conversation going on, but the point is, Jesus doesn't waste time. He starts going to help Jairus' daughter. Notice all the people followed. That's nothing new. The people are crowding around him. And then something interesting happens. So in your mind, try to picture this. Jesus is walking, Jairus is next to him, and I'm sure, they're talking back and forth. And you got all these people crowding around, and they're all bumping into him and this kind of stuff. And then verse 25, Mark says, a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors. Now, we don't know exactly what her ailment is, but Mark tells us she's been dealing with this for 12 long years. 12 long years. And we're going to see she has been dealing with this for as long as Jairus' daughter has been alive, because his daughter is 12 years old. There's some things going on about the number 12 in this, but we're not going to get into that. But it's interesting that she's been suffering for 12 years, and the daughter of Jairus is 12 years old. And so it says she had spent everything that she had to pay these doctors. But she had only gotten, or she had not, but she had gotten no better. That's how my text reads. She had gotten no better. That sounds really Southeast Oklahoma, doesn't it? She ain't got no better. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that hard to believe that a person could go to the doctor and spend all their money with going to the doctor and not get any better. Have any of you ever experienced that? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Doctors practice medicine. They practice medicine. Don't you want someone who is or at least knows how to do it. I mean, if you practice something, means that you're not an expert in it, right? You're just practicing it. Anyway, I mean, what better thing to do than to practice something and get paid to do it? But she hasn't gotten any better. And so, I mean, she's at her wit's end. All of her money's gone. She's still suffering. How is society treating her? Okay, she's unclean because of the bleeding issue. Okay, so no one's going to go around her. People are going to shun her. So she's been kind of ostracized. And she's in this crowd of people. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it's possible she's not from this area. And if that was the case, then people would know her. But she knows she's unclean, so and that fact could play into the way that she approaches Jesus. Okay? And so she hears that Jesus is there. She doesn't know what else to do. And so she goes out to encounter Jesus. Look at verse 27. She had heard about Jesus. She had heard about Jesus. What does that tell you about evangelism? What did Jesus tell the man who had been saved from the demons to do? Go and tell your family, okay? Why is this woman out to encounter Jesus? Someone has been talking to her about Jesus. Maybe not directly, but maybe they were talking to someone else and she overheard it. But the point is, someone's been talking about Jesus. And this woman has heard about it, heard about Jesus, and so she's out there and she wants to encounter him. So she comes up behind him through the crowd and she touches his robe. Now, we know that she was unclean and all that, and maybe she's thinking, because of my condition, I cannot approach Jesus directly. I need to do it kind of secretly. But she touches his garment. Why does she do that? What does Mark say? The reasoning in her thinking, why does she do that? Yeah, she's thinking, if I can just touch his garment, I'll be healed. Now, what's interesting here is in the first century, there was a magical superstition that said that basically these individuals that could perform magic, that they had a certain power that if you could just touch their clothing, that power in some way could enter your body. And this was part of their thinking. It's probably part of her thinking as well. And so that's why she chooses to just touch his garment. You know, if I can just touch his garment, I'll be healed. Or it could be that her faith is so great that she's saying to herself, you know, I don't even have to go before him. He doesn't even have to see me. I know he has the ability to heal me. I've seen it. So if I can just get there and touch his garment, I'll be healed. Maybe that's what is behind her thinking, rather than the magical superstition of the day. But she touches his garment, and verse 29, Mark says, what happened immediately? Oh, yeah. I mean, immediately the bleeding stopped. She could feel better. She could feel that her body is whole again. Yeah, has been healed. But what does Jesus do? Jesus realized at once that power had left his body. So you've got this woman, she touches his garment, and we're told immediately she's healed. And Jesus immediately feels it. whoa, who touched me? You know, he's in this crowd. People all around him. Jesus go, wait a minute. Who touched me? Somebody touched me. I felt power leave me. Who did that? And notice the reaction of the apostles. These apostles, and in the Greek, the wording is such that they are scolding Jesus. Jesus is saying, who touched me? And listen to the apostles. They say, look at the crowd pressing around you, Jesus. How can you ask who touched me? Literally, they're saying, what a ridiculous question. Why are you concerned about people touching you? There's people all around you. And Jesus, I don't think Jesus is listening to them at all. I think Jesus is still going, wait a minute, someone touched me. Who is it? Who is it? And they're saying, Jesus, let's keep going. You know, there's people all around you. Who cares who touched you? No. Someone touched me. There's power left my body. I want to know who it is. What if you had been that person? Jesus stopped, and he's looking for you. Are you in trouble? I mean, what would be going through your mind at this point? Yeah, you think, oh no, I'm in trouble. I mean, I took power from him. I didn't ask him if I could have that power. Is he going to take it back? Could he take it back? Well, I mean, and so she's afraid, and we would be too. She is afraid, but Jesus isn't giving up. I don't think Jesus was going to take another step until he found out who touched him. Well, what if he didn't? Does God know all things? Can God choose to forget? No. I mean, God says, when he says, I forgive your sins and remember them no more. I call that divine dementia. You know, we like to think, and I think that's part, and that's a good question, Mike. I think that's part of our human nature, that we want to kind of portray God in our image. And so we kind of want to try to limit what he can and can't do. I mean, and so automatically we say, well, it was no big deal. He knew. Really? Then why does he keep asking? Why doesn't he just go, okay, you just touched me? Why doesn't he do it? He keeps saying, who touched me? Who touched me? Is he just asking that because he wants her to admit it? Maybe. But it seems to me as though he doesn't know who did it. And so he's asking that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that, it's easy for us to just say, well, God knows all things. But then when we start really wrestling with the text and go, okay, if that's the case, then why did he spend so much time looking for her? Why didn't he just turn around? And so finally she speaks up. Okay? He's not going anywhere. He's asking who did this. She better fess up. And so look at verse 32. But he kept on looking around to see who had done it, as if he doesn't know. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, is she surprised that she got healed? Didn't she go there for that intent? If I just touch his garment, I'll be healed. She does it. She gets healed. And now she's afraid. She's trembling. Do you think she might be asking herself, who is this man? Do you think she was expecting to be healed quickly and completely, or just maybe start feeling better, and as time went by, was doing okay? Yeah.
I think she might have been also surprised that he knew something had happened.
Oh yeah.
Pushing against him.
Yeah.
And also on that, it said he felt the power leave him
Yeah.
when she did it. So I'm sitting here thinking, when he would have, and he would heal all these people, this was taking a drain on him because power was coming out. You could
Yeah.
see why he would go out by himself and just kind of recharge.
Yeah. That is a very good observation.
Kind of get ready to do some
Yeah.
work because it was draining on him.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure Jesus at the end of the day was exhausted, you know, and isn't it extraordinary to think that you could just touch his garment and then you would feel this power come, a healing power come out of him? And so she's terrified, and you know, maybe she wasn't expecting it to be all inclusive and just immediately she's feeling better. You know, it's kind of like you go to the doctor and they say, here, why don't you go home and take this pill? You take this pill and immediately you're going to feel great. You'll feel better than you've ever felt in your life. And then if it were to happen, and then if it were to be permanent, you know, that would be an amazing thing. This is way more extraordinary than that. Okay? And she's scared. He's asking, who did this? And so finally, she came and she fell at his feet and told him what she had done. What do you think she was expecting at that point? Perhaps, yeah. Because keep in mind, you know, she was unclean. She's not an unclean person, especially an unclean woman was not supposed to be in the public, not supposed to be in the crowd, not supposed to be touching a Jewish man, being unclean. So she's violated a lot of things here, and then he's confronting her. And so she falls down and she tells him what she had done. And then look at verse 34. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. He says, daughter, your faith has made you well. What does he mean by that? Your faith has made you well. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, she had the faith that we don't know how long she traveled, how far she traveled to be here, but she had the faith to make her way through that crowd and to touch his garment. Definitely. But could he be saying something else? He didn't touch her, did he? Now, other people that he healed, and we'll see in just a few moments, Jairus' daughter, he's going to touch her. And other people he healed, he touched them. But in this instance, Jesus doesn't even know she's there, and she gets healed. He doesn't touch her. He doesn't say a word to her. He just feels the power leave, and then that's when he encounters her. So what is he saying about faith here? Yeah. Faith in action. Yes. I had a professor when I was working on my master's degree. He used the term concretize. And he'd say people need to concretize their faith. And I thought, what in the world does he mean by concretize? Concretize, concrete. And that was the point he was trying to get across. We need to concretize our faith. We need to put our faith in concrete. We need to make faith a part of who we are. And so she's putting it into action. What else does it tell you about faith? Daughter, your faith has made you well. I thought Jesus made her well. The power left him, went into her. She's better. He doesn't say, daughter, my power has made you well. He says, your faith has made you well. Does that mean she didn't have to go through all of this and make her way to him and touch the garment? Could she have just stayed at home and had faith and been healed? She puts her faith in action. Yes, definitely. This is one of those questions that when you're reading this on your own, this is where you want to pause and spend some time just going, thinking about, what is he really saying? Daughter, your faith has made you well. Not no. Yeah. Yes.